Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. I just got sheared like the sheep I am. I know a lot of you guys think I'm a sheep because I don't have the tinfoil hat fastened to my head 24/7. But in this case, I was, because I just got sheared for nearly $250. That's a PB for that gas guzzling monstrosity of a Toyota Tundra, because gas prices hit a record $1.95 here today in the province that I live in, and it's much worse across the country. I'm not sure what the record is. I'm sure it's around $2.50 in some places, in some like far remote places. I don't even want to imagine what it is up way north. But in Newfoundland, the average price for a liter of gas is $2.20, and you got to times that by 4 and then do the math minus 30% to get the US equivalent. It's probably same as California prices. And BC is around $2.15 a liter. So we are getting fleeced, man. And we're like we have most, shale oil and tar sand oil, but we have some of the biggest oil deposits out there. Part of the reason for this is that there's a bottleneck at the refining level, so they're saying, which is a result of what they call the bullwhip effect. So the bullwhip effect is when during the pandemic, you had all these companies, the demand was reduced for oil and gas because people weren't driving everywhere and all the rest. So they shrunk down their operations. Then, of course, everything opens up. People start driving again. The whole work from home thing starts to subside. And of course, demand increases rapidly. They can't keep up with it. Plus, on top of that, you have this Russian war thing going on, which is the perfect storm to raise prices because the refineries can't get the diesel and gasoline out the door fast enough. So they say. I'm sure there's probably more to it, and I'm sure a lot of people in oil are not worried about making a little extra money while they can, right? Is it gouging? I don't know. All I know is that it sucks. It really sucks. As you can see behind me here, we have the Harvest Right freeze dryer. We got these in. They're on the website now, but they're flying off the shelves. I think we had about 38 on order, and about half are already gone. And we didn't even tell people that they were on the website yet. So clearly, there's a big demand for these machines. If you don't know, this machine allows you to. I'll just quickly show you. But there's trays, and you put your stuff in the trays, and there's a lot more to it than that, all right? But you put your stuff in the trays and close the door, turn it on, leave it in there for about 24 hours. It sucks all the moisture out through a process called sublimation, and it's going to allow you to make any food last 25 to 30 years, with the exception of some very high fat content foods. So it's a good investment because the price of food keeps going up. The price of food will be higher next week than it is today. Therefore, put stuff in here. You eat that stuff a year from now, you're going to save yourself money. So there's a high upfront cost. There is a energy cost that's associated with it. But on the whole, it pays itself back, because stuff like this, that's why it's so expensive. This is Peak Refuel, probably the best tasting, not probably the best tasting freeze-dried meals out there. There's a reason why you're paying $10 to $15 US for something like this, and it's because of the energy and the time that went into it, and it's because of the very long expiration dates, okay? Now, there's a reason why the price of food and gas and diesel is going up, and the price of these other commodities are actually starting to go down now. So you're starting to see all those products that are, associated with customers' discretionary spending start to come down a little bit because there's more of a demand. Actually, I shouldn't say the prices have come down, but the demand has diminished, and you're seeing a lot of stores have increased amounts of inventory in the shit that we don't need, okay? In that plastic crap that nobody needs anyways. The stuff that people need, that's the stuff that's going up in price. Your rent's going up in price, your gas is going up in price, your energy bill, your power bill, your food, all the things that we as humans need are gonna skyrocket when the shizzy hits the fizzy, which of course it isy. Now, baby formula shortage hits a record 74%. 74% record shortage, and that's not really the scary thing. Okay, the scary thing about this is there's 10 states that now have shortage rates at 90% or greater, with Georgia the hardest hit at 94%. This is from Bloomberg, and they use some data from 130,000 stores that's analyzed through a program called Data Assembly. That's how they get these numbers. So it's not looking good, man. Not looking good. Now, as I previously indicated, there is someone, a very important economic analyst named Jamie Dimon, says, brace yourself for an economic hurricane caused by the Fed and the Ukraine war. Now, look, guys, you don't come to me for the news, right? You just come to me because I aggregate all this information and I give you my opinion on it. So, in my personal opinion, I think that we're just at the beginning of what's going to be a wild, wild ride. And I think, you know, when guys like this come out who represent JP Morgan and they're telling all their investors that you need to brace yourselves because you're going to see an economic hurricane and that oil could potentially hit $175 a barrel, then on top of that, looking at the refining costs, plus the war escalating, I mean, the shizzy's going to hit the fizzy, man. I mean, that's all I can say. It's just like people are starting to catch up. Now, there are two main factors, according to Dimon. First, the Federal Reserve has signaled that it's going to reverse its emergency bond buying, and it's going to start the quantitative tightening. So they inflated the money supply. Now they're going to start to bring it all back, right? Because all of them and their buddies probably went out and, you know, capitalized, bought some hard assets. By the time that money hits me and you, the sheeple, it's nearly worthless. And of course, the war, which is the other potential issue. And as he says, wars go bad, go south in unintended consequences, and we're not taking the proper actions to protect Europe from what's going to happen to oil in the short run. And ain't that the absolute truth? Ain't that the absolute truth? The Europeans are getting fleeced, man. Like, if you think we have it bad here, you're talking about 20% inflation in some of those Baltic state companies. And that's, you know, based on how we usually measure it, which is usually a bullshit indicator, because they bundle into that all that shit we don't need, when the things that are recurring non-fixed expenses, fixed expenses, those are the things that go up the most and hurt us in the pocketbook the most, because we got to buy them over and over and over again. I mean, the price of food is just, my God, man. To eat healthy nowadays, you know who's going to make a killing? All the drug companies, because the only place that hasn't really fundamentally changed their prices are shitty fast food restaurants like McDonald's. And lo and behold, it's one of the few places that's open all night. So the hospitals are going to do good. Invest in healthcare is what I'm saying, because you think about it, a recession would cause people to eat less healthy. Therefore, they would likely lead to more health complications down the road. So invest in, you know, things like insurance and health insurance. And I don't know if there's ways to invest in health. I'm not an economic guy. I'm just saying that you got to think, you know, SHTF and the unfolding. If you were an investor, what would you do, right? What's coming next? According to Michael Burry, the guy who predicted the housing crash of 2008, and I mean like predicted it to a T. He predicted it so well they made a movie about him called The Big Short. He says that there's still plenty of room to plunge and that it's like watching a plane crash in slow motion. So he's still buying stocks, ones that have already like been destroyed and bottomed out. I mean, Amazon was down like 50% or something crazy like that. But it's not looking good. And on the war front, of course, we got lots of stuff going on the war front. As you guys know, yesterday I released a video talking about the significance of this MLRS rocket launch system that they're sending to Ukraine, and why that is so important. And part of the reason why it's so important is that it's but the first leg of a $40 billion package, and it's actually only a part of that $700 million package. So we're not even dipping into the 40 billion yet. And this is what people need to understand. And this is why the reason why it could potentially escalate the war in such a major way is that it's going to allow Ukraine to stage this counteroffensive. Once, you know, Russia has dug itself into this new territory, if Ukraine decides to wage a counteroffensive, which they probably will because they claim they don't want to give up any territory, and if that counteroffensive starts to take ground back, and it looks like the Russians are being pushed back, you don't want the Russians up against the wall when they're running, I think they're running like 100 nuclear military exercises this year. Yeah, I'm not just making that number up. They are, I don't have the article right in front of me, or maybe I do have it somewhere here. Yeah, during the summer training period, the strategic missile forces of Russia will conduct more than 300 regular tactical special training missions, of which more than 100 exercises at various levels. Okay, and their strategic military forces, missile forces, are nuclear. Those are the nuclear missiles that roll around, okay, on the what are those, like 13 axle platforms or 10 axle platforms. And they're going to be doing training exercises where they move those things up to 100 miles to launch, essentially. And obviously, hopefully they don't launch them. But there's a reason why they're doing that. There's a reason why they're doing a full-on deployment of the SARMATs. I can't remember exactly how many. I think 28 SARMAT missile systems are going to be deployed this fall. So they're putting their strategic nuclear defenses on higher and higher alert. And a lot of people are really, really underestimating this ramping up of armaments, because remember where it all began. Okay, it all just began with the javelins, and then they started upping the ante. Eventually, they're going to send more powerful stuff. They're even talking about sending some drones, not the Predator drones, but I can't remember exactly what they're called. I had an article on it here, but I didn't print it off. They're going to be sending some drones that are going to be able to, potentially cause some damage. Even though we know the Russians have a fairly capable missile defense system that's been shooting down, like, I don't know how many, like 2 of those Turkish drones a day or some crazy number like that. In terms of what's going on in eastern Ukraine, the numbers are sounding pretty scary. Upwards of 500 casualties per day. And that's just casualties, of course. We don't know the exact number of deaths. And that's just what the Ukrainian officials are reporting. So it's likely much worse, because we all know how they like to either inflate or deflate the numbers when it suits the narrative. Okay? What else do we need to talk about? Oh, there's another big story, guys. U.S. engaged in offensive cyber ops. I think Brad over at Full Spectrum talked about this today, and I just caught wind of it. This is from Zero Hedge as well. I've been quoting Zero Hedge. Like I say, they've cleaned up their act a lot. Okay, the sources that they're referencing are typically these credible news sources, credible insofar as credible nowadays. But legacy media channels, and then they give their own interpretation. Then I give my interpretation of their interpretation. The U.S. military has issued a stunning but perhaps not entirely unexpected admission that it has been conducting offensive cyber operations in support of Ukraine. It marks the first ever acknowledgement and suggests, as many observers have long suspected, a deeper Pentagon and U.S. intelligence role in Ukraine against the Russian military than previously thought. Of course, this is why the Russians are now considering themselves at total war in World War III. Numerous diplomats, representatives, TV pundits have all acknowledged that they are at war with NATO and that this is the beginning of World War III. Sounds kind of sensational, but it is what it is. We've conducted a series of operations across the full spectrum: offensive, defensive, and information operations, including hacking operations. Now, why this is so important is, if you don't know much about the cybersecurity end of things, go and watch some of our videos on cyber warfare. One of the biggest issues with cyber warfare is that there's potentially dormant or latent malware that exists on the computers of, they could be government computers, various institutions that are very important to the MIC, military industrial complex, that could, in a time of all-out war, be activated. Okay, if you want to know, if you think cybersecurity is just going to stop your internet connection, well, you're right, but that's just the first phase of it. Okay, everything is is hackable nowadays because everything is wired to the internet. All critical infrastructure is wired to the internet, whether that's your water system, your heat system, your traffic lights, the whole 9 yards. Even stuff that isn't wired and has its own closed circuit and is what they call air-gapped can still be hacked. And actually, I was talking with a hacker a few months ago, and he told me that a big part of hacking is just surveillance. It's just like espionage in a sense. Because like for the Stuxnet virus that the Israelis put on the Iranian nuclear plant, the nuclear plant was actually air-gapped, meaning that they knew that they were, exposing themselves to hackers from the Mossad and CIA and all the rest if they had their nuclear facility online attached to the internet. So they air-gap it. They make it a closed-circuit system. What happened was that the Israelis found a way to get some random worker there to pick up a USB stick, put it in a computer to see what was on it. And that's all it took. Okay, so it's sometimes a big part of hacking is just finding a way onto the system. And that's why phishing emails are so important. It's so important that you do not go and give those trolls your WhatsApp information that are copying my avatar and every other big channel's avatar. Can I say I'm a big channel now? I don't know if I'm a big channel. Anyways, I'm certainly not a big deal, okay? I'm not a big deal. I'm just a guy. I don't want to be a big deal because I don't want Trudeau to know I exist, at least not until I've built my bunker in the woods somewhere. Anyways, this cyber operation, the reason why this is so significant is because this fall, of course, we have the midterm elections, and this is according to The Hill, okay? The Hill is like edgy but still fairly legacy media. Experts have warned that Russia will likely deploy its cyber operations in the 2022 midterm elections, which will take different forms, including disinfo campaigns and election hacking. The experts have also said that Russia's playbook is to divide the U.S. along party lines and suppress voter turnout. Sure, does it really matter at this point? And even they admit that it's laughable to think that somehow it takes a foreign actor to divide the U.S. along party lines. And the other question to think about here is that if the Russians are so busy in Ukraine by that point, because at that point I believe that the war is going to have escalated, because even the Ukrainians are saying that they're going to take back all the territory by the end of August, I think. Very bold statements. You can't believe what these guys are going to say, but I don't think they're going to have the resources to necessarily be meddling with the elections. Not that it's really going to matter a whole lot anyways in the grand scheme of things, because we know how the deep state works, right? There was something else I was going to talk about, but it escapes me now. We know that, did I talk about the Russian nuclear missiles on high alert? I think I talked about that, right? They're doing like 100 exercises this year, or this summer. And I think I talked about that. I can't even remember. But anyways, it's not looking good. So we also have a British MP who says that a Crimean war is possible between Britain and Russia. They could potentially clash. It is possible that the British Navy will come into conflict with Russian warships if they decide to do this escorting of Ukrainian wheat vessels out of the Black Sea. And the only reason why I can see them doing that is if they're trying to instigate an issue. Again, the Russians claim that the Ukrainians have mined the Odessa, or around the Odessa ports, and the Ukrainians are denying that. They're saying that the reason why they can't get through is because the Russian blockade. You know, who knows who's telling the truth? And to be brutally honest, at this point, I don't even know what's what. Is there even really a war going on? Oh, I shouldn't have said that, right? Because now all the tinfoil that's like, fastened to the head or stapled to the head, those people are going to come out and be like, yeah, man, it's all fake, Even I'm fake. Do you guys know I'm just this is Unreal Engine 5 right here. I don't actually exist. This is all AI. I was killed long ago, and they're just using, what do they call that? Deep fakery to keep the videos going. Yeah, that's how this all works. Anyways, snag a freeze dryer if you got any money left before they run out. I think it's a good investment, because especially if you use it, especially if you have a farm or a homestead, because this is going to allow you to preserve a lot of that food much longer than canning. And you also get the added benefit of not needing any special storage, super lightweight. And if you can't get a freeze dryer, just pick up some Peak. Just try one out. I guarantee you, you won't be disappointed. It's really more of a meal replacement than it is something that you're gonna throw in the closet for the apocalypse and probably never eat. And when you do go to eat it, you figure out how disgusting it is. And I'm not talking about these, I'm talking about those big, 30-day emergency buckets that say Patriot somewhere on them. That's all bullshit, guys. Don't go for that. If it seems too good to be true this day and age, it absolutely is. Let me know what your gas prices are where you're at and how you're coping with all this crap going on. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Canadian Prepper out.